Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a woman whose name was Tolani. She was the most popular wedding planner in the state, but no one knew what she looked like. The mystery behind the Tolani brand only made her more desirable, like a myth that brides wanted to be a part of. The more invisible she was, the more powerful her presence became. Everyone wanted a Tolani wedding, even if they never got to meet the woman behind the magic. She was known as the master planner, and people booked her months in advance, some even years. That's how much the people wanted and trusted her services. Others, they paid outrageous sums just to secure a date with her. No complaints, no negotiations. All they wanted was for Tolani to plan their wedding, and they were willing to pay anything to make this happen. Tolani stood out from others. Her creativity was top notch and the aesthetics breathtaking. The vendors she always used were the best of the best. Tolani was the celebrity's choice to many brides to be. She wasn't just a planner, no, she was a dream come true. The woman who would make their special day flawless. But behind all the glitz and glamour, Tolani was hiding something dark, something that made all the couples who ever used her jump out of their skin in terror. Tolani was a perfectionist who ensured that her clients all got the wedding of their dreams. She always had the rule that her clients had no option but to accept. Tolani never met her clients one on one. She never spoke to them on the phone or even allowed them to have access to her directly. All communications had to be done through her representative, Mr. Kola. No one knew for sure what Tolani looked like, and the mystery of it made it so intriguing as all the people cared about was having a Tolani wedding. Every wedding she planned went viral, and people basked in the publicity that this gave to them. One day, a young woman named Cheta reached out to Tolani's office to book her for her upcoming wedding. Cheta was a rising media personality, smart, classy, and loved by the public. Her engagement had just made headlines, and her fans were already buzzing about what her wedding would look like. So, of course, she wanted the best, and to her, the best meant Tolani, the wedding master planner. As usual, she didn't speak to Tolani directly. A man who identified himself as Mr. Kola handled all communications. He was firm, formal, and very strict. He sent her a contract with instructions boldly written in red, stating that Cheta was not allowed to speak to or meet with the planner at any time. All decisions were final, as Tolani did not tolerate any form of interference. Cheta hesitated at first, but her friends advised her that Tolani was definitely worth it. Reluctantly, she signed the contract, and the planning began in earnest. Things moved like magic, and Cheta could not hold back her excitement. The decor plans were flawless, and the sample photos sent to her were dazzling. The vendor list for her wedding was like something from a luxury magazine, and Cheta and her groom Ugo were so impressed. However, the idea of not knowing the planner did not sit right with her mother, who told her that no bride should hand over her wedding to a ghost. My daughter, your wedding is such a special and delicate event to hand over to a woman who no one knows. Her mother found it hard to understand why a woman as powerful as Tolani would refuse to be seen in public. My daughter, if a person is afraid to show his face or her face, they are either hiding shame or hiding something evil. But Cheta laughed it off, knowing how spiritual her mother could be. She tried convincing her mother not to worry, stating that it was only branding. Everyone is going digital, mother, face or no face. This woman knows what she's doing, and she has proven herself to be capable of handling the wedding. Cheta said to her mother, who could not bring herself to accept the explanation that her daughter had given. Cheta's mother could not shake off the uneasiness that was growing in her spirit. Her instincts were always right, and over the years, she had learned never to ignore the whispers in her mind. Without telling her daughter Cheta, she decided to pay Tolani a visit. She arrived at her office and met Mr. Kola, who informed her that Tolani was not open to receive public visits. Cheta's mother tried to force it, but Mr. Kola called the security on her and she was bundled out of the office like a nuisance. She arrived home worried about what she had experienced. Could it be that her instincts were right? She thought to herself as she felt shivers run down her spine. As she sat there confused, her daughter Cheta walked in to inform her that her husband to be Ugo had just bought her a car. She was so excited, but her mother did not look excited at all. You need to tell the wedding planner to stop, she said to Cheta, who frowned her face and told her mother not to give herself high blood pressure for nothing. You are being worried for nothing, Mama, Cheta said to her mother, who pleaded that she listens to her. I'm your mother, and I won't deceive you, my daughter. This Tolani woman, I don't trust her. Why is it that none of you have ever met her before? Does that not tell you that something could be wrong? Cheta gave her mother a reassuring smile. Mama, it's all in your imagination. All the couples that she has planned their wedding are still together and happy. No one has even divorced. So Mama, relax and enjoy the process with me. That's all I want you to do, Mama, she said to her mother, who sat still, her fingers clutching her wrapper as her eyes darted towards the window. My daughter, have you checked on any of them lately? She asked Cheta, who informed her that Tolani planned her colleague's wedding 9 years ago. In fact, she was the one who recommended Tolani to me, saying that Tolani was the best I would ever get. Tina is still happily married to her husband and they have two beautiful children already, she said to her mother, who could not understand why she still felt uneasy. Cheta reassured her mother once more that everything would be alright, and her mother sighed deeply and said nothing. Perhaps her fears were truly misplaced. She sat back and watched as the day of the wedding drew to a close. Nothing strange happened, and Cheta's mother forced herself to believe that everything would be fine. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and the wedding was flawless. No detail was out of place as the hall sparkled like something out of a movie. A-list celebrities walked the red carpet, and influencers posted photos tagging Cheta's wedding as the wedding of the decade. Every major wedding blogger magazine in the country featured the wedding on their cover pages, and social media buzzed for days with photos of Cheta and her groom in their luxury outfits. Cheta glowed beside her husband Ugo as the world watched in admiration. Mama Cheta could not help but smile, seeing that her baby girl finally had her dream wedding. She stood by the couple, her hands lifted in silent prayer, hoping that her fears were just her thoughts playing tricks on her. Months passed, and nothing seemed to have happened. Cheta was living happily with her husband Ugo. She was yet to conceive, but that was not the problem, as Cheta deliberately wanted to start trying. After 1 year of being married, she believed that she needed time to bond with her husband properly before taking in, so she put off pregnancy until after 1 year. Her mother was now at ease, watching how deeply her daughter Cheta was with her husband. The laughter, the warmth, the peace, it all reassured her that all was well. Mama Cheta could not understand why she had been so troubled in the first place. She brushed off her fears, choosing to believe that they were simply natural anxieties of a mother giving out her child in marriage. Months passed, and all seemed to be going on well till something strange happened. Cheta's colleague Tina was found dead with her husband in their home. They had died in their sleep, peacefully, with no signs of a struggle, no health conditions, nothing out of the ordinary. The news broke the next morning, and Cheta heard it on the radio while making breakfast. At first, she thought she had misheard, but when her phone started buzzing endlessly, she realized that it was real. Tina and her husband were dead. She dropped her cup of coffee, the ceramics shattering on the kitchen floor as her heart began to race uncontrollably. Cheta remembered in that instant that Tina was about to celebrate her 10th year anniversary with her husband. They had spoken about it severally in the office, and Cheta was so sure that it was soon. She rushed to Tina's profile to check the date and realized that today was her anniversary. Tina had gotten married exactly 10 years ago, and now she was dead with her husband. Cheta could not help but tremble. She picked up her phone and dialed her mother, who rushed to her house immediately to meet with her. It can't be a coincidence, she said to her mother, who began to silently wish that she pushed harder for Cheta to cancel Tolani's services. I wish you listened to me, my daughter, she said to Cheta, who could not stop thinking that Tolani had something to do with Tina's death. She held out her phone and began to search for all the weddings that Tolani had planned in the past. Several of them were still alive and happy, but Cheta came across a few who had also died mysteriously. One of the couples were said to have drowned on their 10th year anniversary vacation in the Maldives. The other died in a mysterious house fire on the very night of their 10th anniversary. Both husband and wife trapped inside while everything went up in flames. Cheta's hands shook as she scrolled through the articles, her eyes filled with tears as her mind began to race. Each couple she checked had one thing in common: they had died on their 10th year wedding anniversary. A cold chill ran through Cheta's spine. She turned to her mother, who was now on her knees praying, her voice trembling as she muttered Psalm 91 underneath her breath. Mama, Cheta said, her voice low and shaking. What if this is real? What if Tolani isn't just a planner? Her mother opened her eyes slowly and began to speak. Tolani did something to you all. She did not just take your money, Cheta. She took something from you and every couple that she planned their wedding. And if you don't act fast, something evil might happen. Cheta could not help but tremble. She became obsessed with finding the truth, and her husband Ugo began to feel that she was overreacting. Don't you think that this might be a coincidence? Ugo said to Cheta one night when he returned home and found her sitting behind her laptop, engrossed with news articles, blog posts, and online forums, cross-checking names and dates of every couple that Tolani had ever planned a wedding for. Cheta looked up at Ugo, her eyes sunken with worry. Coincidence? She repeated, her voice tight with frustration. Ugo, I found 6 couples. 6 who all died on the same exact date, their 10th wedding anniversary. No illness, no warnings. They just died like that, Ugo. Just gone. Ugo sighed and walked towards her. Babe, I get it, you're scared. Tina's death shook everyone, but maybe you're just overreacting and tying things together because you're so scared that the same might happen to us. Cheta's eyes watered as she closed her laptop. She reached for her wedding contract and showed it to her husband Ugo. You need to read this, she said, handing it over to him. Ugo took the paper and scanned through it. I've read this before, love. I was there when you signed it. No, Cheta said, her voice now trembling. Look beneath the cancellation policy. Look at the fine print. A faint grey ink that none of them bothered to read. By accepting this agreement, you and your spouse are guaranteed 10 years of marital bliss. At the end of the 10-year term, the balance shall be collected in full. No appeals, no escape. Ugo's hands fell to his lap as he opened his eyes wide in shock. What is this? He asked Cheta, who stood there confused as the both stared at each other in disbelief. We need to report this to the police, Ugo said to his wife, who nodded her head in agreement. They arrived at the police station and met an officer who informed them that they were not the first to come forward with suspicions about the wedding planner. However, there was no concrete evidence for the police to work with. The last time they paid a visit to her office, they found nothing suspicious, only her representative Mr. Kola, who allowed them speak to her over the phone. Cheta and her husband Ugo tried to convince the police that their lives were in danger. They showed him the wedding contract, which stated that they were guaranteed 10 years of marital bliss and that after 10 years, the balance must be paid in full. The officer looked at the contract confused, trying to wrap his head around what it meant. Just pay them their balance and everything will be fine, he said to Cheta and her husband, who informed him that Tolani was evil. It's not about money, officer. Balance doesn't mean cash. It means our lives. Every couple who she ever planned their wedding, every single one of them, died exactly 10 years after their wedding day. The officer scoffed. Madam, do you know how many strange contracts people sign every day? If no one's breaking the law in plain sight, I can't file this as a criminal case. Ugo clenched his fist and yelled angrily at the officer. So we just wait to die? He asked the officer, who sighed and leaned back in his chair. If you want my honest advice, I'll tell you to go to a church because what you're talking about sounds like juju and juju no dey get police case so, he said to them as they left the police station disappointed. Hours later, they arrived their home and Cheta felt so terrible knowing that the police was not willing to help them despite their complaints. She picked up her laptop and began to browse through articles, looking for anything that would be helpful in finding who Tolani really was. After hours of searching, she found an article buried under countless pages of search results. It was an article written by a woman who tried to warn people about Tolani. Stay away from the evil wedding planner, she wrote in the article, talking about the decade of death and the fact that Tolani's decision not to show her face was deliberate to achieve her evil goal. The replies under the post bashed her for spreading lies about their favorite wedding planner Tolani. However, one comment stood out from the rest. It was a single reply posted anonymously 3 years after the article had gone viral. It read, "If Tolani ever planned your wedding, burn all the items she ever gave to you. Don't just burn the items, burn the memories. She marks couples through the gifts she sends, especially the wedding veil and the groom's tie. If you ever want to know who Tolani is, go to the only old house on Baker Street. You won't miss it." Cheta in that moment remembered how Mr. Kola insisted that his boss Tolani had decided to give the couple their dream veil and tie as a way of appreciating them for using her services. It didn't seem like a big deal to Cheta, who agreed without thinking twice. Now, her heart dropped, realizing that the gifts were evil. Cheta ran to the bedroom and flung her wardrobe door open. Inside, still neatly preserved in a white box, was her wedding veil, soft, silky and still smelling faintly of lavender. Her husband's wedding tie hung from the hook beside it as Cheta snatched the tie and veil in panic. They had never used them again since the day of their wedding, but neither of them had the heart to discard the items. Cheta rushed to the back of the house and lit a fire in a metal drum. She threw in the veil first and watched as the fire engulfed it before her eyes. She then tossed the tie into the fire and watched as the flames roared higher and immediately died down. Cheta could feel a sense of calm. She was not sure if it worked, but one thing she was sure of was that the evil items were no longer in their possession. As she walked into the house, her phone rang and Cheta realized that it was an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment and picked the call, eager to know who it was. "Hello," she said, but everywhere was silent for some seconds, followed by a whisper that sent chill down her spine. 10 years was the price. The contract cannot be undone. Fire cannot save you. The deal was sealed the moment you wore it. The countdown has already begun, the voice said as it laughed out wickedly and hung the call. Cheta held her phone tightly and collapsed to the ground, her heart racing as she tried to reach her husband on the phone. The call rang and rang, but her husband Ugo did not pick up. Cheta had to get to the root of everything now, so she grabbed her car keys and rushed out of the house to Baker Street. Cheta drove down Baker Street and arrived at the old house that was described in the comments of the post she just read. She sat in her car and watched the house, deliberating on if to go knock on the door or not. As she sat there, she saw something that she never expected. Her husband Ugo walked out of the house and Cheta could not wrap her head around it. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as her heart pounded like a drum. She stared in disbelief as her husband Ugo drove off from the old house on Baker Street, the same address where the anonymous comment had revealed that she could find out who Tolani really was. Cheta's mind raced with questions. What was Ugo doing there? Did he know about Tolani? Was he part of this? Cheta took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. She could not turn back now, not after what she had just seen. So, she approached the door of the house and began to knock, but no one answered the door. She knocked again, but this time harder, and the door finally creaked open. Cheta walked into the old house and met a woman who stood behind the door smiling. "You're here," the strange woman said as she gestured for Cheta to follow her in. Cheta hesitated for a moment as she watched her mobile phone ring repeatedly. It was her husband Ugo, and Cheta could not pick his call until she understood what was happening. "Are you Tolani?" she asked the woman, who informed her that there was much to tell. The woman led her to a room and gestured for her to sit. She sat across from her and began to speak. "Tolani is not who you think she is," the woman said, her voice low and steady. "She is my twin sister, and once you've seen me, you've seen her, because we are so identical. Her real name is Deborah, and she was not always like this. My sister Deborah was a very calm and friendly girl who life dealt a fatal blow. It all happened 15 years ago when we both turned 20. Deborah had a dream of becoming a well-known wedding planner. She did everything possible to make a name for herself, but this was cut short when the unthinkable happened. Deborah was hired to plan a wedding for a group of friends who were scheduled to get married on the same day. It was a huge contract, and Deborah was so delighted to be planning their weddings. One day, she received a call about an urgent meeting with the couples. Deborah abandoned all she was doing and rushed to the meeting. She arrived at the venue and met the ladies who offered her a drink. Deborah took the drink and fell to the ground unconscious. She woke up a few hours later to hear machines beeping continuously around her. She no longer had eyes, and her face was badly disfigured. The doctors revealed to her that she was so lucky to be alive, but Deborah did not feel lucky. She felt cursed, broken, betrayed by the very people who she had worked so hard to please. What she did not know was that her clients were ritualists who had used her in a blood sacrifice to make themselves rich. All she could remember before blacking out was hearing them say that when they finally become rich, they would hire the best wedding planner the country had ever seen. Deborah did everything possible to find them, but they were nowhere to be found. All the names they had provided to her were fake, and Deborah had no way of finding them. So, she decided to make herself the best wedding planner the country had ever seen, so as to exact revenge on them her way. Deborah went into hiding for 2 years. No one heard from her. No one knew where she was, and during that time, she lived like a ghost in an abandoned family house on the outskirts of Ibadan, a place so hidden that it didn't even appear on the maps. There, broken and blind, she made a vow. Deborah offered herself up, her pain, her rage, her very soul, in exchange for power. She entered into a covenant with forces not of this world, and the deal was simple: for her to become the best wedding planner in the entire country, whose clients will end up dying on their 10th year anniversary. From that moment, Deborah ceased to exist, and Tolani was born. My sister knew that so many lives would be ruined by this, but she did not care as long as she got her culprits one day. She was now the best wedding planner in the country and knew that the culprits would come looking for her to plan their dream wedding. To the innocent people who got caught up in her web of revenge, she availed them 10 years to enjoy marital bliss, after which her revenge would take full effect. Her contract stated it all in fine print, but many did not even bother to read the contract before signing. They were so curious to have their weddings planned by the best. Cheta sat frozen, her fingers digging into the armrest of the chair as the woman continued her chilling revelation. "I tried to stop her," she said softly. "I begged her to forgive, to heal, but Deborah had already given herself over. What she lost that day was not just her eyes and face, it was her soul. And once the covenant was sealed, she became something else entirely." Cheta's throat was dry. "Why the veil and the tie?" she asked, her voice shaking in disbelief, and the woman gave her a bitter smile. "That's how she marks them. Every bride and groom gets one, her signature of death. The veil and tie are more than gifts. They are tokens of the deal. Once worn, the countdown begins. Nothing can stop it, except one thing." Cheta's eyes widened as she asked what it could be. and the woman informed her that they had to find the people responsible for her sister's predicament. They have to come ask for forgiveness, or else the curse would not stop. Cheta sat there confused. She did not know who these people were, talk more of where to find them. All the woman said to her was that one of the culprits had a unique tattoo on his arm, a tattoo with the number 1159. Cheta's eyes widened in shock. Did you say 1159? She asked as she felt her heart drop. Could it be? She thought to herself as she thanked the woman and returned home. Cheta returned home shaking, unable to breathe. She stepped into her house, her legs shaking beneath her as she clutched the edge of the door frame to steady herself. 1159. The number wasn't just familiar, it was tattooed on her husband's arm. Nothing made sense to her as she tried so hard not to believe that her husband was responsible for all that happened to Tolani. As she sat there, Ugo walked into the house to meet with her. Where have you been? I've been calling you for ages, he said as he approached his wife Cheta, whose eyes were red from crying. How could you? Cheta asked Ugo, who tried to understand what she was talking about. You ruined her life, and now many people have died because of your evil deed, she said to Ugo, who she told everything that Tolani's sister had revealed to her. Ugo sat there shaking as he stared at the tattoo on his wrist, unable to say a word. After a long silence, Ugo finally spoke. Cheta, I did not do it. I swear to you. Cheta blinked, confused, then explained the tattoo. Explain everything to me, Ugo. Ugo leaned forward, his voice calm but strained. Many years ago, back when I was still in university, I had a friend named Bemi. He was wild, adventurous, always dragging me into crazy things. One day, he dared me to go get a tattoo. He said that it symbolized living life to its fullest, that the number 1159 meant we should live like we only had 1 minute left. Cheta stared at him silent as he continued. I was young, dumb and trying to impress, so I agreed and we both got the tattoo, but everything changed a few years later. Bemi came to me one day with an offer. He told me that there was a way we could become rich through something he called spiritual elevation. Rituals, Cheta, blood money. He had already met some people who could help. He said they were planning a big sacrifice. Ugo's face twisted with disgust. I said no and walked away, and we never spoke again. That was the end of our friendship, as I buried that chapter of my life and moved on. But I never got to remove the tattoo. I didn't think it mattered anyway. Cheta's breath caught in her throat, her hands trembling, as she asked her husband Ugo what he was doing at the abandoned house on Baker Street. I went there to drop off a purse that I picked up from the roadside. It had an ID card in it that had the address, so I called up the owner and rushed to return it. He said to Cheta, who stood there stunned to see that all her doubts about her husband had been wrong all along. Tears filled her eyes as she collapsed into a chair, relieved that her husband was innocent. However, they had to find Bemi, and Ugo had a faint idea of where he could be. They arrived his home, and Bemi was so delighted to see them. He welcomed them into his home, and Cheta confronted him for what he did to Deborah. Bemi had been married for almost 7 years and had a few years left to live. As expected, Tolani planned his wedding, as well as that of his other friends, who all died mysteriously on their 10th anniversary. Bemi was the last to get married and the only one still alive. When all his friends began to die, Bemi was so terrified but didn't know what to do. He had been living his life, not knowing that Tolani was still alive and the one responsible for all that was happening. Cheta informed him in that moment that he had a few years left to live if he failed to make things right with Tolani. So many people have died all because of your wicked deed, and many are yet to die, including my husband and myself, if you fail to make things right with her. Bemi felt so terrible to hear this. He agreed to meet with Tolani, and Cheta took him to the old house on Baker Street. Bemi was so terrified, he did not know how to face Tolani after all that he did to her. Tolani's sister ushered them into the room where her sister was and Tolani could not believe what she was feeling. Even without the gift of sight, she could feel his presence, the weight of his betrayal pressing through the air like a thick fog. She rose slowly from the corner of the room, her disfigured face cloaked beneath layers of silk veils. I didn't know you were alive, Deborah. I thought you died that day. I was a fool. I was greedy. We used you, lied to you, hurt you, and all for what? Temporary wealth. Look at what it cost. My friends are all gone, and I haven't slept peacefully in years. I never knew you'd come back, Deborah, and I never thought you would go this far to seek revenge. Tolani's voice cracked, revealing the pain beneath her vengeance. You made me this way, Bemi. You and your friends ended my life before it even began. I died that day, and something else took my place. Bemi slowly crawled forward and rested his head at her feet. Please forgive me, he said. Please, take my life if you must, but spare the innocent people who had nothing to do with it. No one else has to die, because you have finally found me, he said to Tolani, who stood still for a long moment. The entire room fell silent as everyone anticipated what she would do next. After a while, Tolani stretched out her hand and lifted the curse, to the surprise of everyone present. She had spent all these years consumed by bitterness, destroying the lives of countless innocent people who had placed their trust in her. Tolani was not different from Bemi. She had done even worse things in her quest for revenge and knew that she had to stop. She lifted the curse in that instant, setting every marked couple free. A heavy silence settled in the room as no one anticipated what she did. Bemi could not believe his eyes. He thanked her repeatedly, promising to do everything within his power to make it up to her. Cheta and her husband Ugo were so relieved to know that the curse had been finally lifted. Her sister rushed forward to give her a hug, and for the first time in years, Tolani spoke to her sister with so much kindness. She whispered to her, thanking her for never giving up on her. Tears streamed down her sister's face as she embraced Tolani tightly. I just wanted my sister back, she sobbed gently and gave her sister a hug. The bitterness was all gone, and Cheta was so grateful for how things turned out. She learned her bitter lesson, never to ignore her mother's warnings again. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we must never ignore our instincts or warnings of those who truly care about us. Being blinded by glamour and appearances can lead to dangerous consequences, especially when we fail to look deeper. Holding on to pain and seeking revenge only leads to more destruction, turning victims into villains. The story also reminds us of the importance of reading every detail before making life-changing decisions. Finally, true healing begins when we confront the truth and have the courage to expose evil, no matter how deeply it's hidden. I hope you enjoyed the story.